Morning. I would like to point out that today's proceedings will also be broadcast on the Chamber of Deputies web TV channel. Let me also remind you that remote participation is permitted for fellow MPs. There are several MPs that are linked up with us. The agenda includes the informal hearing of Yossi Beilin Samieh Al Abed on the geopolitical situation in the Middle East. I would like to welcome and thank Mr. Beilin, Mrs. Beilin, and Mr. Al Abed. Welcome, and thank you so very much. It is truly an honor to have you here today in this very important hearing. The delegation is accompanied by Mr. Marco Pierini. Welcome. I would also like to thank MP Fassino for promoting today's hearing, which is of particular importance for the committee's work. Let me remind you that today's meeting is indeed pivotal, and this will be focused on the viability or feasibility of a solution for coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians within a framework of the state's recognition. Let me remind you that Yossi Beilin served in many capacities. In particular, he served as Deputy Foreign Minister and Minister of Justice in the Israeli government. And he was also a leading negotiator in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process that led to the signing of the Oslo Accords in 1993. In 1995, under Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin's administration, and this year we celebrate 30 years since his assassination, he formulated the Beilin-Abu Mazen agreement as a possible basis for an agreement between Israel and the Palestinian state. After retiring from political life in May 2015, in an editorial published in the New York Times, and then 10 years after, with an essay, he proposed the creation of an Israeli-Palestinian confederation, the Holy Land Confederation, with the idea of reciprocity, based on which a certain number of citizens from Palestine and Israel will be allowed to live in the other state, provided they will abide by the laws of the hosting state. This will eliminate an obstacle to the attainment of a peace process. This is to say, the forced eviction or evacuation of people. Under this idea, Jerusalem will become an open city, allowing the free movement of people, goods, and capital. I now introduce Mr. Samieh Al Abed. Amongst other things, he served as Minister of Public Works and Housing in the Palestinian National Authority's Government of National Unity in 2007. And he also served as a member of the Palestinian negotiating team at the Camp David Summit in July 2000. Mr. Al Abed has always stressed the importance of Israel and the world recognizing a sovereign and independent state of Palestine based on the resolutions of the United States Security Council within the 1967 borders. We are all aware of the importance of having here an Israeli citizen and a Palestinian national both here today. And this is indeed of the essence. This is pivotal, and they will help us flesh out the feasibility of a peace solution based on mutual recognition and a political agreement based on coexistence. I now ask Mr. Yossi Beilin to take the floor, and now after him, I'll ask Mr. Samieh Al Abed to take the floor. So, Mr. Yossi Beilin first, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chairwoman. I really appreciate your readiness to. Thank you. Okay. I really appreciate the fact that you invited us to meet with this very important body. And what you have here is a meeting of good friends. Usually we are used to an Israeli against the Palestinian, and each of us is trying to convince that his or her side is right and the other one is wrong. And we feel that we passed this stage in our life. What we believe is in peace, but it is not just a general idea that it is nice to have peace and love. We are the graduates of the solutions. We spent endless hours, endless, it is uncountable, in order to bridge the gaps between the parties, between the Israeli interests and the Palestinian interests. And we found ourselves in very strange situation, you know, that after years of negotiations, we used to ask each other, is it good for us? And the other side sometimes would say, you know, for you it is not so good. Because if you get what you ask for, there will be A, B, and C. And then you say, you know what, you are right. This is the kind of negotiations and relations that we had through the years. And of course, as the peacemakers, as you know, are getting also bad criticism in their homes. It's not easy, it's not simple, more difficult in Palestine than in Israel, but on both sides, you get it. There are always people who believe that you are the traitors because you are ready to make a compromise, and there is no peace without compromises. Now, the point is the following. If you ask, now I speak for myself, but I'm sure that also for Samieh. If you ask us seriously, is it possible? With all this hatred, with the October the 7th, and then the retaliation, and the tens of thousands of Palestinians who were killed by Israel, is it possible to make peace? My answer is very clear. I mean, I have no doubt in it. Because this is the real interest of both sides. We are not doing favors to each other. If we don't make peace, Israel will not remain democratic and liberal and Jewish. No chance. Because if we don't make peace, and there is a majority of Palestinians between the river and the sea, as they say, a minority of Jews will rule a majority of Palestinians? For how long? For how long? It is impossible. And for the Palestinians, if they don't get their state, their dream for self-determination and their deep need for self-determination after years in which they were under other regimes, the Turkish, the British, the Israelis, they are losing hope. They will lose the most important thing that they want to have. And since this is an interest of both sides, this is realistic. And the other thing is that if we speak about the idea that was mentioned here generously by the chairwoman, the idea of a confederation between Israel and Palestine, which allows both of them to remain or to be independent and sovereign, following the model of the European Union, and which is also open for more countries in the future, like Jordan, for example. This idea doesn't have to wait necessarily to the moment in which the two peoples will fall in love. We have to admit the level of hatred today is unbelievable. You ask Jews about Palestinians, you ask Palestinians about Jews, they don't want to see them anymore. That's very clear. But the idea that we have to educate another generation that the other side doesn't have homes is wrong. Because then we will wait and wait and wait. And then when we remember what happened in Europe after the Second World War, or even before the end of the war, we understand that in the worst moments in history, enemies were able to make peace. Because they knew what was the price for not having peace. They were the victims. And our story is a story of a competition between two victims who were more victimized than the other. We excel in this story of victimization. And we want to end it. So I will be more than glad to refer to the issue, the specific issue of a confederation. But I want you to listen to Dr. Samieh Al Abed, who is a real partner. And you know, partners know not only how to agree, but also how to disagree sometimes. But I understand that the other side is doing it because of its commitment to its values, to the ideas, and to its people. And we are trying to convince, and most of the time we agree, we succeed to convince each other. But even if we fail in doing it, we don't think for a moment that the other side is doing it because of whatever non-relevant interests in the cause. So thank you very much.
Grazie mille.
Thank you very much, and I will now give the floor to Samieh Al Abed for his speech.
Thank you very much for having us here in this chamber, Chairman. And it always will make it difficult for me to speak after Yossi, because he always said the things that I wanted to say. So, but I agree with him, of course. We don't disagree in many issues, except one thing. When I was in Geneva dealing with each other, and we came with an agreement in Geneva, right? And the only thing bad happened to me that I have a stent in my heart because of the negotiation. So they were so difficult, you know, to negotiate with the Israelis in reaching an agreement. But we managed both to keep the same track that there is no other solution except to have a peace agreement between the Palestinians and the Israelis. No other way. People sometimes think about one state or two states or the new idea of Yossi about the federation, confederation, and all that. But if you look at them all, they wanted to have an agreement, whether it's one, two, or federation. So the whole idea is all of us looking forward in order to reach an agreement. Why is it that difficult so far that we did not reach an agreement in which we know that we are there to stay and they are there to stay, no other way? Ethnic cleansing will not help, will not support, will not happen. Transfer people from one place to the other will not happen. You know, like I said, we are there. So the problem that I can see mainly, first of all, we need the international and the regional support for this agreement. And when it was for the regional agreement or the international agreement, sorry to say that the Americans were there most of the time. But unfortunately, we did not get anywhere. Okay. Now there is a new element that the region are there. And the lack of the European influence in getting a deal to be there. It's one of the things that we really missing. We don't need you only to support the Palestinians financially and economically and all that. We want you to be involved in the political issue. We are in your front door. We are very close to you more than anybody else. The lack of your, not interest, you are interested in making peace for this, but your involvement. Why not? Why not to be involved politically in order to get a deal done between us and the Israelis? And you have a lot to influence. You have a lot economically, educational, you name it, in everything. You have a role to play there. So I'm here to ask you to support us both in order to reach an agreement to be involved in the issue of peace between us and the Palestinians. What we are asking for, Palestinians, if you ask me, I want my freedom, and I want my dignity, and I want a better future for my children and grandchildren. Why you are not supporting that? For why? I want my freedom because I want to end the occupation. And I want my dignity in order to have my own state. That's my dignity. That's who I am. And I want to have a better future by living side by side with my neighbors in a peaceful way and a goodwill. Is this too difficult to ask for? Is it so difficult for people to understand what is the meaning of freedom? And you all taught us what is the human rights, what the international law, what all of that. And when it comes to us, it's a different matter. You don't care. We need your support as much as you could. And this is my message to you. It's not difficult between us to reach an agreement. We have many alternatives for the agreement, for every single issue that is in our way. We worked on it in details for all the issues, refugees, Jerusalem, borders, territory, and all that. We have an agreement. We have different alternatives. We could look at it again with your support, with your help, and we can show you this and to see how can you play a role in order to be more effective in the peace process between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It's not enough for the region and the Americans. We want the European to be there with their weight. And another thing, of course, we have all the many European countries, they recognize the state of Palestine. And when it comes to Italy, it's still, you know, hanging there. We want your support for that, because for us, this is the key issue in order to reach a peace agreement, and it's a key issue for a real reform within the political system of the Palestinian people. And I want you to think of this as well, and thank you very much for having us.
Grazie mille. Do ora la parola ai colleghi.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give the floor to my colleagues who are present here. Honorable Provenzano.
Parlerò in italiano, ma innanzitutto.
First of all, I'd like to warmly thank you and thank Mr. Honorable Fassino, who organized this meeting. We welcomed with great pleasure and satisfaction the ceasefire agreement, and your presence here testifies the need and the will we all have to take the adequate steps to reach peace. We have a truce which is ongoing, but we don't have peace yet. The Trump plan and the resolution of the Security Council of the UN dating back to a couple of days ago undoubtedly represent some steps forward, but they are constrained, they have limitations, they are vague, and these gaps must be filled by politicians in Israel, politicians in Palestine, and at this particular moment, I believe that the international community too should step in, and Italy included. Your appeal is very, very important. However, there is a feature that I would like to ask you about, which has to do with the political context in which your peace initiative is placed. This is a very complex, indeed complicated political context. I have just returned from a visit both to Israel and to Palestine. And what emerged was that the situation is extremely serious, both in Tel Aviv than in the South Bank. It is indeed very worrying. And Mr. Beilin made a fundamental link happening with peace and justice. The government in Israel apparently does not want either. We, I believe, have the duty to shed light on the important issues in terms of defending the rule of law, and I'm thinking in particular of Israel, and I'm thinking of the situation in prisons and the situation of human rights. At the same time, we have the duty to ask our interlocutor, the Palestinian Authority, to make an effort to regenerate itself. Rejecting Hamas is not enough. We need a highly legitimized, supported political leadership, which is supported from the bottom up. So I would like to ask you, what do you expect so that we can still support all the actors that both in Israel and in Palestine wish for the two-state solution? These actors must negotiate, because the impression from the outside is that peace initiatives often are fragmented. We supported the initiative of former Minister Holmert and the former Minister Al-Qaeda for it's their peace initiatives, but all peace initiatives must be pooled together somehow. And as the Partito Democratico, the Democratic Party of Italy, we presented several resolutions in Parliament here in Italy to actually acknowledge the state of Palestine, because even the prospect of a confederation may be examined on an equal footing when the other state is fully recognized. So for us, this is a fundamental element. Indeed, over the last few hours, we are asking for the transitional Gaza government to have Palestinian participation, because this lays the groundwork for a true comeback of the Palestinian Authority. In doing this, we need to meet and support all the possible stakeholders and all the actors. Amongst the meetings we've had together with the delegation of European socialists over the last few days, as I said, we met with the family of Marwan Margouti. We asked for his free liberation immediately, because he is a fundamental stakeholder who is loyal to the Oslo Agreement, who is in line with the Oslo Agreement, and who supports the idea we are still keen on of a secular lay Palestine. What we are asking you, in addition to exercising pressure on the European Union, of course, and on the Italian government, what we're asking is how we can practically, tangibly support your efforts and your commitment to peace. Thank you. Honorable Boldrini. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank our colleague, Honorable Fassina, for this initiative. And it is a great pleasure for me to have this delegation. I already met Mr. Al Abed on other occasions, and I'd like to greet Mr. Beilin. Let me raise a point. And I wanted to understand whether this initiative falls within the remit of the Geneva initiative or not, because that's not clear to me, since the agreement was reached in Geneva as the Geneva initiative or independently from that particular initiative. Number two, I wanted to understand whether the concept of military occupation, illegal military occupation of the South Bank, is considered a problematic issue on the part of the Israeli public opinion. I would like to know whether this is at the basis, is the foundation of all these problems, or whether it's considered a fait accompli, a status of fact, a state of fact, and nothing can be done about it. So we are safer if settlers are in the South Bank. This could be one of the options. On Sunday, with other colleagues, we are about to leave to visit the South Bank, the umpteenth visit to the South Bank, but we know from the mayors that we are in touch with that cities in the South Bank are under siege. People can't get out. There are more than 900 checkpoints. The economy is stifled. Universities only work online because students cannot get into the headquarters and the venues of the universities. I'm with you for all the efforts towards peace. I'm at the head of the Human Rights Committee within this very committee. I am with you and I will always support you, but let me understand this. The prerequisites to speak of the two states can be found where? Because if settlers actually go against the IDF, if they are violently opposed to hotspots being removed, it seems to me to see a scenario whereby settlers are not under control anymore. They actually fight against the IDF with 700,000 settlers in the South Bank. What state can we establish if there is no territorial continuity? Is it a realistic prospect to speak of a confederation, as you do? I believe that the level of violence and the level of hate is so high that it seems to me that there are no foundations for this solution. So what can be the solution to stopping the violence from settlers? Is it realistic that the outposts can be removed? Can we speak of a Palestinian state, a veritable state-like presence on the part of Palestine? Because without that, we cannot have a confederation. Thank you.
Presidente Tremonti.
Io molti anni fa ricordo un seminario.
I remember a seminar many years ago on the Lake of Como, and Mr. Arafat and Rabin were both present. The difference wasn't so much in the words they uttered, because they were very close in terms of words, but it was in the closed-circuit system of their bodyguards. So the ones for Mr. Arafat were big and clumsy, and the ones of Mr. Rabin were sophisticated and high-tech. Thank you very much for this exchange of ideas, and I'd like to thank both guests because they went to the core of the issue. Sometimes politicians go round and round and never gets to the point. And this, in fact, is teaching us something of the countries you represent and what truly is the core of the issue. Amongst the elements you mentioned, you underlined that the EU is conspicuous by its absence and is conspicuous by its lack of presence. I believe that today we see a convergence of intentions on the part of the important international stakeholders. So a small step forward can be taken after the ceasefire. And this is a very important element because it is very difficult to find such a wide base for understanding. So in your opinion, what is the Union not doing? A lack of political initiative in showing its unity, in reacting appropriately, in its reaction ability to the changing situation. So when you refer to a lack of influence, what exactly do you mean? If there are no other questions for the moment, I too have a question. I would like to know how your proposal fits in with the so-called Trump peace plan. What kind of interaction have there been, if any? And what type of evolution or development you see happening, starting from what, even though difficult may seem a starting point? Honorable Fassino. Yes, just 1 second. My question is, I'd like to, of course, thank our guests for being here. Number one, after the 7th of October and after the Gaza war, as was mentioned by Mr. Beilin, a deep trough of hate and unwillingness to communicate was created. And of course, trust was completely destroyed. Any peace needs a modicum of trust. After the 7th of October, that trust is indeed very weak in Israeli society, and after the Gaza war is indeed even weaker amongst the Palestinians. How can we rebuild trust? Because I believe that this problem of rebuild trust and confidence is a priority. Without this trust and confidence, any project will be difficult to achieve. Thank you.
Grazie. Prego. Non so chi di voi vuole iniziare.
Who would like to start?
Sami.
Okay, thank you all. You ask very difficult questions and indeed very interesting questions. I don't know from where shall I start to answer, because all interrelated to each other. But can I start from the last one, which is the...
Non c'è un ordine. There is no...
There's no order.
And that, and the role of European also in this. Unfortunately, Europeans and others, they spend a lot of money for people-to-people programs and what they call confidence building measures. You know what happened after all those years? More radicalization in the Israeli side and more radicalization in our side. So there must be something wrong with this approach and the methodology of this. And you have to think about it differently. Or we invite you to look at it in a different way. It didn't work. Because this should be coupled with actions on the ground so people can build the trust. But how come you want the Palestinian to have a trust while every day the more settlements are built there? More terrorist settlers are acting on the ground there. 900, I think it is almost now 1,000 what do you call it? Blocks, yani, for movement. It's more than 100 checkpoints. You know, we get used to that. You know, we forget about it. Yani, we became part of our life. So, in order really to build the trust, you have to have some action on the ground. That is, people have some hope, some vision for the future, that there is something is coming toward them. But as long as you are doing what you are doing there, but I don't know how you can build the trust for this. It's coupled with two things, or even more than that. You have to have an action toward this. Other thing, you know, we talk about the settlements and how the settlements is difficult and all that. But, you know, when Israel decided to have peace with Egypt, they removed all the settlers from Sinai. It wasn't difficult. When Sharon, he's also from the Likud, from the right side, right wing in Israel, he decided to remove the settlers from Gaza. He did it. And at some points in the West Bank. Okay, so you know, one thing to start to think about it in a positive way, it's not impossible, but it could be done in a different ways. And we have the alternative. We have not only in the Geneva, but other alternatives as well in how to deal with that issue. So to me, the main difficult issue is to have a leadership who is willing to do so, or to have an agreement. I'm talking about both sides, even though I am biased toward Abu Mazen because I think he is the man that he can make peace with Israel now. And he can do it. Despite all what the Israelis tried to do to him for delegitimizing his role as the PA. And that was the biggest mistake that the Israeli policy was done even before 7th of October, because they were enhancing Hamas and delegitimizing the PA. And you see the result, what happened. So this is, the Israelis have to rethink their policy toward how to achieve peace with the Palestinians or how to make an agreement with the Palestinians. This is an important element. And here will come the European Union action with us. If you leave it between us and the Israelis, I can tell you from now, the asymmetry is too wide between us and them. The only agreement the Israelis want us to do is to accept what they're offering us. And this will not happen, because we have demands. Like I said, we have our own demands also. So there is a need for a third party, which is now, we can see that there is an element to that, while the region and some Islamic countries with the Americans are there, they have in the 20 points or whatsoever, but there is a role for the European to be engaged in this, because there is a black holes within that 20 points. We can work together in order how to fulfill those issues in order to make it workable to reach the end game and how to get there. So there is a role for the EU they can play for the reconstruction of Gaza, reconstruction of the West Bank as well. And why I'm saying that? Because the status quo here, we the Palestinians, we cannot utilize our natural resources in order to say, thank you, EU, we don't need your help, we don't need your support. We're not utilizing our, there is a lot of issues in the Dead Sea. There's a lot of issue in gas, in petroleum, in agriculture, in all of that. We are not allowed to touch it. So you see, that's part of the problem. And we haven't seen a voice from the EU saying, you should really expand. You know, my own city now, Ramallah and Al-Bira. I cannot expand the boundary of the planning boundary of the city of my own home. There is no concept in the Israeli mind for natural growth. Only natural growth for the settlers, and not for us. Most of the buildings now in my hometown is vertical. You know, they're coming up because they cannot expand. And this is polarization. It will be difficult for us in the future to accommodate the infrastructure needed for this, with the growth of population and all that. There are many issues touching the people. When you say the bottom up and how to encourage the people from there, people, they want their needs. And nobody is thinking about their needs. We're controlled. We were controlled in our life. Why somebody is controlling my life, where to go from one place to the other? How much water I drink? How much electricity do I have? And I have to have a permit in order to come to the airport, in order to come and meet with Yossi. Why? There are small issues, but there are very, very important issues in order to build the trust among the people, and as well to see the people that there is something is coming toward them for reaching an agreement. And believe me, we have many, not only Nasser Qudwa and Olmert plan. There is many other plans out there, and they all fit within the range of this. And the only thing that we can do in Geneva is how to combine Geneva with the 20 points that Trump is coming up for. how we can make sure that, or at least to make it to the people that this can be done, and for people to listen to us. We want you, the European here and the Italian and others, to think about it and to think with us and how to move forward for this. And I'm not complaining about anything, you know. I want to have peace with. We can have peace, me and Yossi Beilin. We already have it, yani. We can revise this and we can have it one more time. It just sometimes we find it very difficult, even for both of us to meet in order to talk about it. You see, so it's very fundamental, your support the European Union and the Italian government to join other European countries for the recognition of the state of Palestine. It is very important for us because this, you are helping us for doing the reform within the state and not from outside. We cannot do a reform with A, B areas, fragmented here and there. It cannot be done. It cannot be done, as simple as this. But we need to have the state in order to think, and we have an obligation toward the international community to act as a state. And one weapon, one parliament, and the judicial system, and executive system, that's where you can ask for a reform. I think reform is a matter that is happening to any state. I mean, in your state, I'm sure that there is a reform every other year, you know, to think about the development for the future. Why you want us to have a reform under occupation in certain areas that we live in, and we have the best democracy there, and we have the best human rights there, and we have everything within the context of being under occupation. So please ask for the possible thing that we do. No money is coming to us, our money from the Israelis, and nobody is giving us any money. We cannot pay the salary for the employment, for the employees. No workers are working in Israel now. The unemployment is more than 45 to 50% in the West Bank, and without saying anything about Gaza. So what to do? So please, we need some decency in looking at the issue. And people to be fair. We're not saying that to be biased toward this side or the other side, but have some fairness in your proposal and your act toward what is happening there. Thank you.
Yossi, please.
Well, thank you very much for your important comments and questions. One point is the issue of a confederation which has to take place between two states. And this is true. According to our booklet, if you read it, and I believe that we can easily send you the link to our book, which was updated lately. We are speaking about a confederation which will be agreed upon or declared 1.5 years after Israel's recognition of a Palestinian state. So the confederation is not a precondition. The confederation is not a precondition for the two-state solution. The two-state solution is a standalone solution. It can exist with or without a confederation. But what is the point of the confederation? And this is the big difference which happened to us between today and 30 years ago when we signed Oslo. If you speak about 520,000 settlers in the West Bank, if you don't count Jerusalem, this is not a number that any potential prime minister in Israel is going to tackle. No question. Now, at the end, it depends on both sides, but more on the Israeli side, because we are holding the territories. So you have to have leaders like Rabin, like Sharon even, but Peres for sure, Barak and Olmert, who most of them were hawks. at the beginning and were against the two-state solution and against compromises. But understood that there is no other solution for Israel. So we need somebody like that who would be ready to go for the compromise. Now, you know their names. And we know their names. And we know them. And listen to what they say. I mean, the people who are now in their 60s. And they are on their way to become prime ministers, hopefully. They say that they are not going to touch the settlements because they know that they cannot do that. And the precedents of Sinai, and especially of Gaza, make it more difficult for them to think seriously about evacuation. Now, in Oslo, we did not mention the solution itself, but our view was that you can deal with 100,000 settlers and evacuate them. In Geneva, we said the same. The same. There were about 230,000, and we said, okay, we will find the Israeli prime minister who will be courageous enough to risk his life, her life, in order to evacuate them. The story is over. It's over. And what is important for me to deliver here today to you is that if one says, I recognize the Palestinian state, I say, thank you very much. Okay. And then, وبعدين, as they say in Arabic, what happens later? You recognize the Palestinian state. I am ready to recognize a Palestinian state 40 years ago, since 40 years. They deserve their state. There is no reason why they won't have it, and I recognize it. But how can it become a reality if those who are in power are not ready to evacuate the settlers? And if you go to the West Bank and have a chance to meet with the settler, I don't know, I don't meet with them, but will you meet them?
No, we don't.
Oh, no, we won't.
Want to meet with you?
We are not going to meet the settlers.
But somehow, let us say, poetically.
Unless they don't stop us along the road.
Of course, they may. No, they may.
I hope not.
They may. But poetically, what they say is, dear friends, many years ago, you said that we are a small minority who will not have any impact on any solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But we had time, we had patience, and we won the case. Take a helicopter and look at the West Bank. Everywhere you have settlements. Where do you want to put the Palestinian state? On the roof of a settlement? What are you going to do? To evacuate all of them and bring them to Tel Aviv? We are there forever and forget about the two-state solution. It is almost quote unquote. And this is why I think that the debate in Europe and other places about recognition of a Palestinian state, it is important, and morally it is important, and that is why I'm for it. But this is not going to solve the problem if you don't tell me how are you going to do that. And I don't see people who are recognizing the Palestinian state and then have a kind of a footnote saying, by the way, you can do that if you implement A, B, C. This is why the idea of a confederation, which was not an original idea, it was there hovering in the skies for many years between Israelis and Palestinians, even before '48. But the idea of the confederation is just a tool in order to allow or to prevent any confrontation between the Israeli future leadership, I'm not speaking about the current one. If Mr. Trump will convince Netanyahu to go out of the settlements, maybe he will do that. But otherwise, I don't see something like that. But I'm speaking about elections which will take place in 11 months from today. It's not such a long while. And if the future government is there and ready to compromise, but not ready to evacuate, forget it. We will continue the conflict forever. And the numbers will grow. See what happened with the resolution of the UN, which I really am happy about. And why not? All of us are. We want to see such a development. Had you asked me a week ago whether it is realistic, I would say no. But you see, China and Russia don't abstain, and wonderful. But the point here is that it doesn't even refer to freezing settlements. Now, imagine that all what is said in the resolution there will be implemented, and you know that it won't. Okay? What will happen in the meantime? More and more settlements. Now, I want to tell these settlers, you do whatever you want. It will not have an effect on the future boundaries. Because at the worst scenario, you will remain there. You will have to be obedient servants, obedient residents of Palestine, and go according to the laws of the Palestinians. And the same number of Israelis who would like to live in Palestine, in Israel, the same number of Palestinians who would like to live in Israel would have the right to do that. If out of the I'll tell you something, out of the 500,000, about 300,000 will be part of Israel as a result of land swap. It is 2.25% of the West Bank, according to the borders of the Geneva Initiative. And I tell you a secret, the person who drew the border sits here. Why it is 2.25 if not 2.30? Because of this guy. So we have the border, we have the map. We did not change it. For those who asked about the relations with Geneva, we took Geneva and put an umbrella of the EU on Geneva in order to allow different things, including an agreed-upon narrative, which had never been done before. Never Palestinians and Israelis were ready to write together their narrative of the conflict. And this is the basis for this confederation. And if you look at it, it's 20 pages, but not boring. There are some other parts which are boring, but not that. So the point is that if we understand that the major obstacle is the settlers, and if we understand that the Israeli future government is not going to evacuate them, then we must find a solution for them. This is a solution. Maybe there is a better one. Because we were asked about the Trump plan and our ideas. Trump suggested 17 enclaves in the West Bank of Israel. Why did he suggest it? Because he understood that somehow we had to deal with the settlements and the settlers, and he didn't know exactly how. So he said, okay, Israel will have sovereignty on 17 areas. You know, we made the calculation of what does it mean for Israeli security to have such long borders. It is something like, I don't remember exactly the number, but something like 11% longer than the old green line between Israel and Jordan. It is crazy. Israel doesn't have such a big army. So this is not a realistic idea. But the problem is realistic. This is the problem. He understood the problem, and he gave to it the wrong solution. When you speak about our idea of a confederation, we suggest something which, in our view at least, is realistic. But it is not the Quran, and it is not the Bible. And if somebody else has something wonderful, building a Riviera somewhere, I mean, like Trump, I mean, he has such ideas. So maybe if you have an idea about Riviera for the settlers or something like this, it is better than what we suggest. But I believe that this is a very concrete and realistic solution. Maybe one more. Well, I think that about Marwan Barghouti, it is very important to speak. I know personally Marwan Barghouti for many years. He came after Oslo. And he was banished and was allowed to come back after Oslo. And he was one of those who supported Oslo very, very much. And his group, he had already a group of people in their 30s who supported the two-state solution. In every meeting that we had, he would count the people's years in prison, and would say, okay, we are sitting here not about exactly 230 years of prison. And they were proud of it. But he was a man of peace. At a certain moment, he came to me and said, Yossi, I don't have a better solution than to take to the streets, because even in your government, which is moderate and whatever, you are not getting towards a Palestinian state, and people are sick and tired of us and believe that only Hamas is the solution. He went, I can testify wherever you want, because he came to me to tell me that. He went, or he took to the streets because of Hamas. His competition as a Fatah person with Hamas. He saw Hamas as his biggest enemy. I tried to convince him not to do that, and I said to him, Marwan, you will never win on their turf. Terrorism is the turf of Hamas. Your turf now is peace. Put pressure on peace. Whatever you can do, demonstrate, shout, scream. But terrorism, you will lose. And the rest is history. Now, he is still for peace, he is still very popular, much more than before. He is the most popular Palestinian according to all the public opinion polls in Palestine for many years. And I think that those who believe in the need in Israel for a partner, Palestinian partner, who is now he is also accepted by Hamas for different reasons. But the person who may really be an uncontroversial leader accepted by many streams in Palestine is Marwan Barghouti. Those who don't want to release him, of course they say that he was banished for many, I mean, there is justification for that. I mean, he is not San Suu Kyi. He was a traitor for a while, a terrorist for a while. But he is, if you want a partner, it is Barghouti. I agree 100%, of course, that Abu Mazen, President Abbas, is a very, very serious partner. And that the people in our government who say that he is a kind of a terrorist, it is really a joke, unbased joke. Terrorist because he is paying the salaries of the Hamas people. Okay. But I think that an effort to release Marwan Barghouti. Even Trump said that he is considering doing it. How can he consider to, to free Marwan Barghouti? I don't know. He doesn't speak about demonstrations. But this is the case. So if you ask me, I believe that one of the options for acting in a very targeted way is to call for his release, not because he must be exonerated, no, but because he can be a partner to Israel, and he is a man of peace. And about other things, I think that such meetings are very important, and meetings in Europe are important, and public meetings are important to hear the voices of people who believe in peace. And historically, Oslo was not in the United States. Stockholm, where my negotiations with Abu Mazen about the permanent agreement in the 90s took place, is not in the United States. Even Geneva, to the best of my knowledge, is not in the United States. All the efforts that we did took place in Europe. I'm not speaking even about the Venice Declaration of 80. And I believe, like Samieh, and Madrid, of course, right? And it is all gone. At a certain moment, maybe because it is difficult to find the common denominator in Europe, maybe because at a certain moment the Americans, even our very good friend Obama, said to the Europeans, leave it alone, leave it to me, and nothing happened. And it became a little bit, if you don't quote me, it became a little bit convenient for some European partners not to be involved anymore in the story. And our common call on you is come back. And maybe another word of an Israeli. It is very easy to suggest sanctions. It is very easy. And you may argue whether it is right or wrong, whether we deserve it or not. But it is too easy. To go for peace is much more difficult than to suggest sanctions, because you create hatred toward Europe. Europe became an enemy in Israel. Israel became an enemy for Europe, and you don't need it, and Israel do not need it. And believe me, for those who love Europe and who love the EU and as an idea in Israel, it's not easy. It's not easy.
Grazie mille, una testimonianza.
Thank you very much.
Con tanti.
Thank you so very much. You gave us food for thought, also for our political deliberations. Thank you very much, very, very much.